once again to the Iron City Roundhouse Report, the podcast where the love for the high iron meets the precision of the scale model. Whether you're tracking the latest Class 1 freight movements or perfecting the scenery on your home layout, we're here to celebrate the history and hobby of railroading. Climb aboard and settle in as we clear the signals for another journey through the world of trains. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Iron City Roundhouse Report. We are very glad that you've chosen to join us yet again for another episode. We are currently heading pretty quickly toward right about what would be probably the midpoint of our season 2, and this will be season 2, episode 17. So we're like one away from the total number of episodes that we recorded last year. And we're, a lot of exciting stuff coming up here. But this episode is very exciting in its own right because we're going to revisit a guy that we've had on here before. He's a good friend of ours and one of the key members, one of the irreplaceable members, really, of the original core group of Iron City guys, one of the OGs, we called him. And he was on that very popular OGs episode, which gave a lot of the history about the formation of Iron City, the Iron City N-Scale group, the Iron City page. And so we're really happy tonight to have our good friend Mike DeSensi with us, who is now going to be referred to, I guess, as El Presidente as of season 2, episode 7. Is that correct, Pat?
Yeah, that's it. We're on season 2, episode 17. El Presidente. Mike is on this evening with us. Brad, we've had a lot of people ask us to talk about operations. We've had a lot of people ask us about, different things about T-Track and everything. But we did have a lot of people come up and say, hey, we'd like to hear a little bit more about clubs in people's personal layouts and what they have. And we thought, what a great time. Mike has just been elected recently as the president of the Ohio Valley Lines, which is a layout just west of Pittsburgh, outside of Pittsburgh, one of the suburbs. And tonight we have some great conversation with them about, what it takes to be a president. How do you join a club? Because a lot of people don't know that there are clubs, around the country. A lot of times they're kind of private, not because, they're trying to keep people out. It's just that it costs money to advertise it, and it takes a lot of effort. And a lot of these clubs, the energy is more on the club getting things built or worked on or maintenance, and less on a advertisement or marketing campaigns or stuff like that. So I think it's good to hear about how a club is formed and built.
Yeah. And there's still a lot of that, I think, with clubs too, that feeling that we're in a dying hobby, Pat, that if you the model railroader generation that we're part of, if you look, I know it always, before we got hooked up with all this stuff on the internet, it always kind of depressed me to look at the advertisers index and model railroader, because I can remember when there were more shops advertising in that thing, more brick and mortar stores in the state of Pennsylvania alone than what is there now. If you look at a model railroader from the late 80s, early 90s, and compare it to what you see today, if you've never seen one of those older ones, where you'll be astounded at how many stores and retailers and stuff were advertised. So if you come from that background, I know it led me to believe that this hobby was a dying hobby. But with what we've been able to do, and with the people, including Mike, who's one of the important people we hooked up with early on, we've been able to see that the hobby isn't dying. We're just coming up with different ways of finding each other. And some of these clubs, and I'm not saying OVLs like that, but there are, and you mentioned some of the clubs are not having themselves out there. They just, I can understand where they're coming from. They just don't think that, first of all, there's that stigma that young people don't like model railroading. Well, we've learned that's not true. And there's that idea among some in the hobby who have seen the shift. It really, to me, isn't a decrease in the hobby. It's just a shift from brick and mortar hobby stores to online retailers now and such. It's different for sure. And, like them, I miss those days when you could go to the local hobby shop, but it's just a different transition. We're really in a golden age of the hobby. And, thankfully we have stuff like the internet, which does have its down points, but one of the great things that it does is enable us to connect. And I think some of these clubs just haven't realized this yet. But of course, we know Mike does because he's been involved, right from the very beginnings of what has happened here with the Iron City group. So we wish him the best as he continues that. Being the president of any organization, I can testify to the fact that it is not easy. There's a lot of competing interests. There's always a lot of personalities to deal with. And, kudos to Mike and anybody who is not afraid to step up and take that on. And we just wish him the best. And at the same time, we look forward to talking to Mike about that. But before we get to that, Pat, I think we have something else that we have to take care of before we bring Mike in, right?
Oh yeah, I'm ready for the Roundhouse Report. How about you?
Me too. Always enjoy the Roundhouse Report segment, and I think our listeners enjoy it as much as we do. So yeah, let's get going with that. Do you want to lead off, or do you want me to?
I got us tonight. The first one tonight I have is David Yale. David, thanks for posting. David's working on some ideas on some advice he's been asking for. We had some good responses to it, and it's something that Brad and I have been talking about on some different chat lines after he went to the show down at Chattanooga about some people doing some custom printing, custom designs for DCC throttles. And it kind of reminded me of the DCC EX type of folks that are kind of building their own systems in that regard. And that, he was looking for some feedback and some potential shapes. I can't wait to see what he has. Brad says he's got a couple of surprises for us, maybe down the road, that maybe we can take some pictures of once he gets those completed. But David Yale, actually, Brad and I have met David a few years ago. And so it was great to see him actually on Iron City and asking for some advice. Longtime listener, I believe, of the show, which is not that long. We've only been on for a couple of years. But it's great to have people from the beginning that are liking what they're hearing. And Brandon always talked. The show is about the Facebook page as much as the podcast. We're a combined effort here, and I really appreciate him posting that. I can't wait to see what he has to offer, Brad.
Yeah, likewise. It is good that David is part of this. And the meetup that Pat's referring to is from a few years ago. I don't even, what was it, 2022, 21, somewhere. I don't even remember exactly the year. It all runs together. But this was when Pat was still employed as an officer in the Army, stationed at a place called Fort Indian Town Gap, which is south of where I am here in Central PA. But there was an event with the A Modeler's Life podcast that Pat and I were both fortunate enough to be guests on a couple times. But before this is how we got hooked up with them too, really, Pat, and how we found out that we enjoyed podcasting. We kind of went to an event called Tom Stock, which is put on by our good friend Tom Jacobs, who's been a guest with us before, talking about his fine layout. He did two different, I believe, Tom Stock events. And the one of them that we went to, we were both had things that we had to do and couldn't stay for the whole week. And the only night that we could both go was the opening night that they had a big dinner at the Shady Maple Buffet. And as luck would have it, we walked in almost like party crashers. And of course, the AML community welcomed us with open arms. And we ended up sitting at a table with the evil overlord himself. Because I believe he may have been late to the party or something. I don't remember. But anyway, David, to talk about what you're talking about, David was there at the table with us, and that's where we were able to meet him, and he's been a good friend ever since. And this throttle thing that you're talking about, Pat, actually originated at a pretty big event that I was fortunate enough to just return from as we're recording this, the NMRA National Convention in Chattanooga. And a clinic that David and I both attended was about a throttle, a DCC throttle, like you said, by Jeff Bunza is the gentleman's name who originated this. And then another gentleman presented about what he had done with the Bunza throttle. but it's a throttle that can be made with easily. I just ordered all the parts so that I'm going to try to put together a prototype and make sure I can get it to work. I'm pretty sure I have less than $20 in all the parts. Now I did have one of the things that you need is a potentiometer, and I did not have to buy one because I had one on hand. But yeah, it's an exciting thing that we're going to try here. It's been around for a while, but I have to be honest, I had never heard of it until we were at this clinic in Chattanooga, and I didn't even realize David was going to be going to it. But I turned around and looked, and there he was, and we both said, "Oh, this is cool. We got to try this." So I came. Actually, I went back to the hotel that night and ordered up the components, and most of them, in fact, the last of them that I was waiting on just came yesterday as we're recording this. But it's a really cool thing because you can have a DCC throttle. It may not be the most advanced DCC throttle on the market, but it will do what you need to do to run a train. You can have throttle control. You can have control of 5 or 6 of the functions or more, depending on what you want to do with your throttle. You can kind of customize what all can be controlled with it. You can build the throttle to the size that fits for your hand. It can either be larger or smaller, whatever your preference is. And like I mentioned, you can, through the programming of it, you can customize which functions you're specifically able to control with your throttle. And David's post that Pat's referring to is he's a 3D printer. So he's going to 3D print his own cases for that. And, once he wants to figure out how much space he's going to need to fit the components in, and then design the throttle case accordingly. And there is a surprise coming up that I'm not going to tell Pat possibly what that surprise might be in conjunction with this. But if everything works out, it could be pretty cool. So yeah, thank you to David for sharing that post. And also on a personal note, David, it was great reconnecting with you there at the convention in Chattanooga. And we look forward to seeing what you come up with these throttles, because it is, it's a way to get in and and it is, I should mention, it's a Wi-Fi throttle. So,
Right.
that part, there is a fair level of sophistication with it, but it doesn't, from the directions I've read, it does not look to, as long as you have soldering skills, it doesn't look like it's too hard to put one of these together. My biggest thing is whenever I get to the stage where I have to program it, that's where I start to get frustrated. So,
Right.
so our buddy Kevin Squire, be ready for a bunch of
You
Facebook messages
you
on the
stole
side.
you stole that right on my mouth. I was going to say that. I was like, well, I don't have any problems. Kevin does
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Yeah. So Kevin, there might be a whole bunch of people if this takes off asking you questions about how to get, because it's programmed very similarly to the way, and I think you can use even the same software that you would use to program Arduinos, which I do have some experience with programming Arduinos, but Kevin, with his work with the DCC EX and stuff, which is also Arduino based, he I think knows more about that than probably you and I put together programming those chips. So yeah, that was a kind of neat thing, and thank you to David for sharing that, and thank you for bringing it to our attention, Pat.
Yeah, Brad, which one do you have this evening?
Well, I have a kind of a neat thing that I wanted to share, but I do have a bit of a bone to pick with two of our younger members, Pat. And the
Okay.
post I'm referring to is one that one of our young guns, Blake George, posted about an idea that he got from another one of our young guns, Jimmy Brom. And it
Okay.
is a really cool locomotive that they painted, and I'll get into more of that first. But before we get into that, I have to get to the nit that I need to pick with these two youngsters. Jimmy, first of all, for you, giving Blake the idea to deface a Pennsylvania Railroad K4 steam locomotive, and then Blake for going ahead and doing that. So we'll be talking to the two of you about that at a future event. But no, I'm just teasing. I am a big Pensy fan, as a lot of people know. But what Blake did is he took an HO scale, I'm pretty sure, yeah, an HO scale Bachmann Spectrum K4, and painted it up and he 3D printed a face for his. Many may know that Blake is into collecting Sodor, the Isle of Sodor, Thomas and Friends, that line of locomotives. And he took a Pensy K4 and put a locomotive face on it. I forget what he Oh, Hank the American Engine, he named it. So, and he painted the wheels and the cow catcher on the front of it red. The face is white, and then there's a couple other white parts on, and then most of the locomotive is blue. So it's kind of, I think, by the way Blake worded things, it was kind of also part of the, our America 250 celebration, and he painted it up in patriotic colors. And even though it's not a black Pennsylvania K4, I have to admit it looks really, really good. And just kind of a neat addition to Blake's fleet of locomotives. And so Hank, I don't know if Hank the American Engine, I guess he is an actual character on the Isle of Sodor. We'll have to ask Blake, or if that's something that maybe.
Well, he is
Blake,
now.
yeah, we have had a couple other fictional members of the Isle of Sodor. That one in particular that our friend Doug Rakowski came up with. I don't think I'll mention the name because, as most things Doug comes up with, it's a little bit off color. But yeah, this engine, Jimmy again, Blake, I guess, kind of collaborated on this with Jimmy having the idea, and then Blake took over in the execution. And as Blake normally does, I believe he probably installed an ESU Loc sound decoder in that. Or I don't know, maybe the Bachman Spectrum came with sound. I'm not sure, but the locomotive definitely has sound in it because he posted a video, and I'm pretty sure there was sound with it. So it's just a neat looking locomotive. And thanks to Blake for posting that. And well done, Blake, on painting that up. It looks absolutely fantastic.
I always enjoy, Blake's got his YouTube channel that he has and his collection and what he's doing. And it's always funny. You'll see Blake say, I got an idea. And then a couple months later, he'll get a post and you're like, oh, wow, he came up with that one. That's excellent. So
Yeah.
great work, Blake.
And his YouTube channel is DCC Sodor.
Yes.
So if you're looking for some cool stuff to do with, if you're part of the generation that grew up with Thomas and Friends, Blake does a lot of really, really cool stuff with that line of locomotives. So kudos to you, Blake, and thanks so much for sharing that. And Jimmy, thanks for coming up with the idea. And as I mentioned, that we will be having words about this, though. So just be prepared for that. No, it's just a really cool thing Blake did with Jimmy's help with the suggestion. So I wanted to share that.
Okay, Brad. With that, we'll be back in a few minutes with Brad, myself, and El Presidente, Mike DeSensi, with this week's show. We'll be right back. Hey, welcome back, everybody. We have a very special guest. One of the OGs is here this evening. And I'm going to pass it over to Brad so he can introduce.
Yeah, thanks, Pat. And hello to everybody out there. We're excited about today. We have one of our OGs. For those who were listening last season, remember we had an OG show where we had several of the original founding members of Iron City in that podcast. And we have one of those guys, our good friend Mike DeSensi, is back with us tonight or today, depending on when you're listening to this. So we're excited to have Mike here. And as we mentioned, I'm sure some of you have heard the story before, but Mike is really the one that helped Pat and I to set in motion what would become the Iron City T-Track layout, mainly because Pat and I knew absolutely nothing about T-Track, and we were fortunate just by the sheer force of good luck to meet up with Mike at a Greenberg show. In fact, the way we met up is Mike walked in with his Westview and Santa Fe layout. It's a small N-scale layout that he built, portable, and he walked by us and we're like, okay, that's a guy we got to go talk to. So we were able to hook up with Mike, and fortunately he was also big time into T-Track at the time, and Mike was able to show us the ins and outs of how to set up a T-Track module. And in fact, the first time some of us were, and it was back during the COVID years, unfortunately, so a couple of the guys who were supposed to be there, Pat included, came down with COVID, unfortunately, the night before the show. But it was my personal first experience at what has become one of our biggest shows of the entire year, the Locomotion Weekend at the formerly Carnegie Science Center. Now it's called the Common Science Center. But Mike was able to get us into that, and we had a small T-track set up with just three of us there. It was Mike, Tom Catalano, and myself. But that was my first experience with helping to set up a T-track layout, and it was all Mike's modules because neither Tom nor I had made any modules yet. So that was kind of first experience that we had with what would become the Iron City T-track layout. So always great to catch up with Mike again, and he's had a recent kind of exciting development. He's been a longtime member of the railroad, of a model railroad club called the Ohio Valley Lines, which I believe is in Ambridge, PA. Is that right, Mike?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And so Mike has been a longtime member of that club, and it was recently uh, was it an election, Mike, or did somebody step down and you filled in? I know you became the president. We could probably get into the details more of exactly that happened, but not only an OG, but now also the president of the Ohio Valley Lines Model Railroad Club. So welcome, Mike, and thanks so much for taking some time out of your day to be here with us today.
Well, thanks, guys. I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to give me a chance here to talk about the club and all of the good stuff that we've been doing. And, so to just say I feel like I lead two lives, right? I have my Iron City life with the T-track and everything that goes on with the Iron City group. And then I also have the Ohio Valley Lines group, which is a permanent club in Ambridge, Pennsylvania, which is north of Pittsburgh on the Ohio River. It's been I kind of was asked to be in this president position with Ohio Valley Lines. I will tell you that every year we have our open house season, which usually runs from Thanksgiving weekend through mid-January every weekend for over those 6 or 7 weeks. After last year, we had an election. The gentleman who was president, who ran for president at that election, he unfortunately had a personal situation that in January he had to resign his position as president. So I was asked to become the interim president until we had our normal elections, which were in June, just a couple of months ago this year. So I acted as, the pro tem president for a couple of months, and then I ran unopposed, which is the way things are. There's usually just one person that will step up, and I'm sure a lot of organizations have this same situation where one person is like, yeah, okay, you're it, and nobody else wants the job. To be honest, our vice president has been vice president for since the year 2000, I think. So, and nobody ever runs against him. So it's just to tell you, that that's the way it works. The Ohio Valley Lines. Go ahead. I'm sorry. What were you going to say?
No, you go right ahead. I can get in later.
So the Ohio Valley Lines, we recently just celebrated our 40th anniversary of existence. That was a couple of years ago.
Outstanding.
They started out with just a few guys. They had a space in the old Sewickley post office basement. They started to build a layout there. They were kicked out of there, of course. They moved up to Ambridge to a location, spent a few years there, were kicked out of that space again. And then in 2000, I believe it was, they made a down payment on a building. It's actually two buildings that have been converted into one. It was a former hardware store, and we set up roots there. And we celebrated that we finally paid off our mortgage. We own the building now completely outright. We have 2 floors of model railroads permanent. The first floor, the main floor, is the HO layout. It fills both of the 2 storefronts wide. The N scale layout fills up one of the basements. And then we also have upstairs, we have space for a meeting room. There's a paint shop up there. There's storage. We even have a pretty decent library of railroad books, paraphernalia, things like that. So
That's awesome. It's got to feel good to get that mortgage paid off and know that you finally own the building and don't have to deal with the bank anymore, I bet, huh?
Yeah, but there's still lots of things, as many of you guys know, as being a homeowner, it's still a money pit. You may not be paying money to the bank, but you're paying money for something. We recently, like last summer, we had to have the roof put on, a new flat rubber roof, which was a significant amount of money.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
Right.
Yep. It's never ending. When you own your own building of any kind, there's always the upkeep on it and stuff.
And every winter we hold our breath, wondering if this is the year that the furnace is going to
Oh boy.
die on
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
So
I had no idea I knew the club had been there for a while, but I didn't know that it had been around there for, you said 40 years, right?
in one location or another, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the club, our open house seasons have been becoming more and more successful every year. We started Facebook advertising, which is driving a lot of business our way by it's just one of those ads like that you see in your Facebook feed,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of people come in and, oh, this is the first time here. I didn't even know you guys existed, blah, blah, blah. We've been around for 40 years, and a lot of people saying, I never even knew you were here in Ambridge, So,
So, Mike,
Facebook,
do you think that's becoming a family tradition now for a lot of people to bring their kids and then bring their grandkids as families? Do you see a lot of that with the new advertising and everything?
yeah. And I will tell you that some of the kids that would come a couple of times a year to just wander around and look at this trains, their parents joined the club as members so that they could bring their kids, and the kids run trains on the HO layout on Monday nights.
Oh, wow.
That's outstanding.
Yeah.
Yep,
Right.
absolutely.
So, as a member, and I can explain more about membership and things like that, but as a member, you're allowed to bring guests. And so the kids aren't really old enough to become official members yet, but they come as their parents' guest. And these kids are running trains and they're having a great time and they're making friends because there's a couple of them that are kind of like in the same age group. And I think that's fantastic, right? I think when I was 12, I didn't know anybody else that played with model trains, right? Let alone to come into a building with a fully scenic, ready to run HO Empire, right?
Right.
When I was 12, I was happy with my little circle track and my Tyco steam locomotive, right?
Absolutely. That's awesome.
So, Mike, we're going to go into some different topics tonight. Since we're already on the topic of the club, we'll go there first, and then I hope to circle back around and talk about a little bit of your personal model railroading experience and some awards that you've won and some things that you've done on your own personal side. That and created a monster between me and Brad, because I couldn't figure out when we first got together why anybody would need 10 to 20 modules. That seemed bizarre. 7 modules later, I understand it all. And I've just started getting it just over the last couple of years. I love it. I think module is the future, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But I'll go back to the club section. So, Mike, how long have you been a member of the club?
So I went there in January of 2017. I think that was that same year that the N Scale convention was in Pittsburgh.
Okay.
I had just recently joined the NMRA because the NMRA convention in that year was going to be in Orlando. So I wanted to go to that, and I thought, well, this is going to be a great thing because Orlando, of course, is a very family-oriented thing, right? So
Right.
my wife and kid could go. They went to Disney one day while I went on layout tours. We went to the Lego amusement park together as a family one day. A lot of things like that.
Right.
So it was a really wonderful family experience. I got to indulge in some trains, go on some tours, visit some clinics. And, on the days when I was doing that, they were off gallivanting around, Disney. I have zero interest in ever going to Disney. Right. Right. So I'm 62 years old and that streak continues. Right. So, right. So anyway, so that was why. Anyway, back to the club, the local NMRA division, they have their monthly business meetings scattered around the region in our division at various model railroad clubs or at like public places like the library and things like that. So I went up with my friend Jim Hoffer, also a member of the NMRA, and we went in. We met a guy there that I didn't know he was there, but I used to be also in N-Track many years ago. You guys might know that 2x4 standard, three trains. So he was a member of that group. So he took me around, introduced a couple of a couple of people. My good friend, who became my good friend, Dick Jackson, he recently passed away. He was a wonderful guy. From the very first day, from that NMRA meeting, he talked to me like we had been friends for 100 years. And, he was just that kind of a guy. And I immediately, when I went home, I said to my wife, I'm going to join this club. And I did. The very next month, in the February month, I submitted my application to them. And the rest, they say, is history as it goes. So
that's cool.
So, Mike, it sounds like for your experience, there was no intimidation about joining the club. It was the opposite. It was very warm feeling of friends that had something in common that you had in common, and they wanted you to apply and to join.
Yeah, so the N scale layout was in still a really preliminary stage. There was a lot of just plywood planes, just some track that was put down and some green paint on the plywood. And so I was like, these guys have an N scale layout and they have a vision for an N scale. And that's what I really want. I don't want to join a club that is just an HO club with an N scale that's like an afterthought. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So since they had a vision for having this N scale empire in the basement, I was like, this is perfect for me. There's a really good group of guys and they have a lot of work that needs done. And I'll tell you that when I joined the club and I started putzing around with the layout, and there was a scene with a farm on it that was just in still very preliminary stages. And I said, looks like a nice thing that I could just say, hey, I want to do this so you guys can see what I can do and I can get a feel for what you guys want or whatever. And Dick says to me, he goes, no, we got something else we want you to do. And he points over at this peninsula that is just basically just a peninsula with a loop of track. And he goes, we want you to build us the city there. So
yeah, you went from one farm to multiple buildings.
Correct. So and I'm really proud of the way it turned out. There was a lot of help, of course, but a lot of that work was me and Joe Yakubusin, who is he's the N scale guy that does all the track work. Dick, and it's a beautiful, there's like an old town section with, what's the word I'm looking for? More nostalgic, kind of like a 50s kind of feel of like all these separate storefronts.
Right.
And then there's a separate little like modern industrial park that has some modern skyscrapers on it. So it kind of morphs from one scene to the other. I was able to put in a trolley line. We have a circuit that like the trolley comes up and it makes all the stops. It stops at all the little island platforms, stops for a few seconds, keeps going, and just makes a nice loop, goes around. We have a nice big railroad passenger terminal in the downtown area, and it's really nice, and it's really a good thing to grab your attention when you first walk down into the N scale layout. So I'm really proud of it.
Yeah, I vaguely remember when I think that's one of the things you showed us when you did your showcase for us. I think, wasn't it, that area?
That's correct. And yeah, I did do a showcase for the N layout. We've since expanded even more. we are pretty much done with the N scale layout. There are some things that I would like to do, but I'm not getting any support from any of the other N scalers because it involves like a major reconstruction of eliminating some of the grades on
Is
the N scale layout.
that 6% grade you were telling me about one time? Is that what you mean?
It's embarrassing to see a B&O EM1, which is a 2884, pulling 6 hopper cars.
Yeah, because there's on the real railroad, there wasn't much that could stop one of those, even with a 100-car train. Was
correct, right? I mean, they were going through like those foothills there in Kentucky and West Virginia and all that, and they were taking care of business.
I believe that they were even larger. Sorry, this is a little off, but they were even larger than a big boy, I think, aren't they? Those EM1s, Mike.
That could be. I'm not sure, but I think they
were. Yeah, a big brute of an engine, regardless. A really cool engine too.
Right. So if you guys know me, you also know that I don't care whose name is on the locomotive. I am just a steam guy.
Right.
I had never had a B&O locomotive before Bachmann introduced that EM1. I have 2 Challengers right now. I've been hemming and hawing about whether I want to buy a big boy every time I go into Esther's Hobby down in Millville, right? But I will tell you that like Broadway has the Santa Fe specific 3751 484 class coming out someday, eventually, right?
Yeah.
And I have 4 of those puppies on order.
Oh, wow.
And when they announced those, the list price was going to be $399. Who knows what they're going to be once they come.
Right.
Right. But it's a Santa Fe and it's steam. So yeah.
Yeah, that's your wheelhouse. Yeah.
Exactly. Right. So yeah, they knew they had a sucker right there. So.
Mike, let me go back just real quick. As you were doing the history, it was HO. You joined in 17 and the club decides to go in. Now, I'm sure you weren't there yet to know, but someone told you. What made the decision to allow them to do N scaling and go multiple scales? Was it the building had space, or people were in N scale and they wanted to do something from their home layouts to bring to the club because they were doing HO and N? How did that come about?
So I don't want to talk for Joe Yakubusin. He's a great guy, but I know he has a nice sized N scale layout in his home, and he has had one for many years. So I think some of the members who have either left or are deceased were kind of like leaning towards not another HO layout, and nobody was really interested in putting a Lionel size layout down there.
Right.
So it's, so N was like the default choice to expand the club, right? Everything upstairs on the HO layout, all the track work was done. Most of the scenery, 99.9% of the scenery is done. Every once in a while, they'll change out. Like they're actually taking a farm scene off the HO layout and they're putting a military, like an army transportation depot in there.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, you'll be right up your alley there.
It's like, I got to get up there.
Yeah.
Hey, Pat, if I could just take a couple seconds to fact check myself. I think my mouth got out ahead of my brain again.
Okay.
The one the locomotive that Mike is talking about, I got it mixed up with the H8 Allegheny, a C&O, not B&O loco.
Okay.
So, you're right, Mike. The EM1 is not larger than the big boy, but nonetheless, it is an impressive engine. So I just wanted to make sure we got that in there.
For those typing away right now, the hate email back to Brad. It's okay. You can delete.
Yeah, right. You guys are taking on the C&O modelers. It's a losing battle.
Yeah, absolutely, yes.
So, Mike, back to it. So, you guys tell us a little bit about the scale of HO, and then their decision to like, okay, we got this size. Now we're going to go downstairs in the basement of Ohio Valley Lines and build the N scale, and kind of give us that size also, if you don't mind.
Sure. And actually, I wish I knew. People ask me this all the time, and I've never I don't know why I can't retain this type of knowledge, but if you imagine two storefronts in Ambridge with the walls separated on the main floor where the HO layout is, it's one huge space. And I'm going to say it has to be at least 30 by 20, if I'm guessing.
Right.
And it's full. The basement is still the two individual like halves of the building. One side is the N-scale layout. On the other side, we have a pretty impressive wood shop with table saws, arm saws, sanders, drills, all kind of stuff like that. And that's all. Everyone can use it. Once you're a member, you have access to doing all that as well. So if you need like to cut something for your home layout, bring your lumber in and use the tools here. So.
And Mike, the N-scale, I don't think people realize how big this club N-scale layout is. I mean, how many trains can you run normally on operation night? How many trains can you run at one time?
So we usually on the weekends, like of the open house, we have 3 trains on each of our 2 individual loops of track. So when you're down there watching the N-scale layout, you don't wait long for another train to be coming by. 6 is pretty good.
Yeah.
I think. The HO layout upstairs, I don't know much about it, and I might be talking out my rear end when I say this, but pretty sure that it is just one huge loop that folds back over itself. So the layout actually runs like clockwise around the layout, and somehow it comes backwards counterclockwise. So your train runs the whole distance, but it's a single loop.
And don't feel bad about talking out your rear end. We encourage that here.
No, you guys know me, right? I'm always,
Yeah.
So Mike, so you were a member since 17. You helped. You're one of the godfathers of the N-scale layout and building and developing. Once you guys kind of hit your, I guess I don't want to say a plateau, but you're kind of peaking right now with most of the stuff completed. What as the president, and I know you've only been the president for a few months, but what are some things a president has to do of a model railroad club? What are some of the things that you feel like you need to do as a president, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, one of the things that I said on election night was that I wanted to put the fun back in model railroading is fun in that slogan model railroader coined years ago. I want the club to be not thought of as, oh, I got to go up there so I can work on XYZ. I want you to think about coming up to the club because there's people that share the passion with you that are a lot of fun to be around, and it's just a good time, right? Then like when we get together at the Science Center or in Altoona for the show,
right.
It's not always about running the trains, right? You run a train for maybe an hour during that day, right? But the rest of the other hours that you're there is all about hanging out with some really good people and having a lot of fun, right?
Making fun of each other. And,
Right. That's right. Statler and Wardle. Right.
That's it. Yeah. If you're ever at a show and you see Mike and I sitting back in the corner and we're looking at you, chances are we're probably making fun of you, but it's okay.
Yeah. We always say these two guys are like the Muppets and the two guys up and overlooking. Yeah.
That's it. What are their names again?
Statler. Statler and Waldorf.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's Mike and I.
So Mike, so you're really trying to bring a culture. You're trying to bring back the culture that what brought you into it in 2017, the fun of it, the adventure of it. So how does just to let people know, because I know there's clubs all around the country and people a lot of times are intimidated to join a club. What's something you would say to somebody if they wanted to join your club or any club?
I would say just give us a shot, to be honest, because there are, like I said, there are a lot of good people that will make you feel welcome. There's not a lot of nitpicker. Like, we don't have rivet counters that are going to say something like, that locomotive never pulled that kind of train, that kind of stuff.
Right.
Everyone's going to ask you about, wow, that's really nice. Where'd you get it?
Right.
And
Right.
and engage you that way instead of
Right.
like saying, blah, blah, blah.
Instead of
Right.
wanting to try to be the smartest guy in the room, you mean, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that, we don't have that. We really, I can't say that I've ever really acknowledged it. I will tell you that we did have a little bit of a personnel issue. And when I started as my interim presidency, that required me to ask some members, or to tell some members, that their membership was being revoked because they were being ignorant and intimidating and making other members feel uncomfortable.
Right.
Yeah, that's never a fun thing to do, but that is
Yeah.
when you're in that position. That's one of the things that goes with it. I'm sure it was no fun, Mike, but
No, it wasn't. It's like, I feel like, oh my God, this is my first duty as president, is that I
Yeah.
got to confront this.
yeah,
But
I
you're
had
trying to
the
make
full
it.
support.
You're trying to make your culture. Those guys weren't going to go with you on your vision of what the club needs to be for the next couple of years. Is what I'm assuming.
Yeah.
So Mike, now that we talked about the club and your culture and that you have HO and N scale, real quick before I go in, I want to talk to you a little bit about your personal hobby habits, addictions. But I wanted to ask you, how do you, and you've done it several times, and I was just wondering how it works. You've invited your other club, the Iron City guys, to come up and be part of the Ohio Valley on your one of your holiday weekends, and let us enjoy the layout. We're a different kind of, we're a T-track group, so we don't have a building or anything. We just kind of go where our shows are at. How how did that work? And I know the response has been great over the last couple of years. I know last year our schedules didn't match, but 3 years before that, we kind of had this kind of walk around, or I forget what we called it, a railroad crawl, where we did the different holiday events, and one of them was yours. How'd you feel that worked out? And maybe talked about, how clubs can share each other's, I guess, members really, or fun really, because we went up there to work on the layout, run on the layout. Some of the members are both in both organizations. How do you feel about that? And do you try to promote that a little bit?
Well, to be honest with you, I really invited, just like the Iron City guys. You guys took it upon yourselves to make like a day out of it and
Right.
visit a couple of the other clubs. There was no like coordination between me and any of the other groups that you visited. And I encourage you guys to go and visit. It's kind of like, maybe someday you'll decide you want to join a club, but you've experienced several now, and
Right.
you decide which one is going to work for you for the best, right?
Right.
So I think when I was inviting the Iron City guys, that was just because you guys are my friends and I enjoy hanging out with you. And, being a member of the club, I said earlier, you can have guests.
Right.
So
Right.
if you guys come up, you can come up towards the end of like our operating hours. You can visit everything at the club. We have a flea market. There's the HO layout. Everything was running. And then towards the end, we come down, and then it becomes just like location for Iron City members, because we stayed late after hours and everybody enjoyed running their N scale stuff on our layout. So
I guess the big thing is
cool.
there's no animosity between clubs. Like, hey, it's okay to belong to one club and come over and see another. I think that's the great thing about the Pittsburgh area. I've never felt that way, and you've been very open with your club to have us come over. So that I think people need to realize that, hey, just because I'm part of one organization or whatever doesn't mean I'm limited. I can visit and go to other places and feel very welcomed.
yeah, there's a couple of other clubs. I used to regularly visit the Western Pennsylvania Model Railroaders Museum in Gibsonia, Pennsylvania. They have just like a huge very prototypical, very historically accurate depiction of Pittsburgh to Connellsville and somewhere else in their layout. But their HO, they're very strict about, because they're trying to build a accurate description or depiction of railroading in the 50s down there. There's not a lot of, what's the word I'm looking for, artistic license.
Right.
Like if you join Ohio Valley Lines and you see a scene and you want to make it better, you go ahead and do it. You just let us know that you're going to do it. And I like that creativity, right? When I built that city, I wasn't thinking about that it had to look like downtown Pittsburgh or downtown Connellsville or anything like that. I built and I put what I thought looked good, and I made a pretty nice city.
Right.
You know? And
so you guys are more of a freelance club than
correct.
The historical club. Yeah.
Correct. And that's the other thing, right? My steam locomotive will be running right next to somebody who's running some SD Mac thing.
Right.
And nobody blinks an eye at it. Right. Because that's what you want to run. Knock yourself out.
Yeah.
Right. I'm going to run my steam locomotives. So there's a lot of freedom that we have at OVL, and we encourage it. Right. So, the kids, they all run up on the HO layout. They run all the modern stuff, all the stuff that they see, because they have no experience with steam locomotives. Some of the older guys, they'd run only Pennsylvania passenger trains.
Right.
Because that's what they remember, and that's what they want to make trains and run. So that there's a lot of like that freedom, that flexibility at Ohio Valley Lines.
Just one follow-up question from before, Mike, if you don't mind, about inviting the Iron City guys there. Are you not concerned about what that might do to your reputation with the other club efforts?
That's why I ask you guys to come after hours.
Also, the cover charge was a little higher for damage control.
Yeah,
and we had to go in the back door.
Okay, it's all making sense now.
So Mike, let's talk, because we cannot talk to you without talking about your personal stuff, your layouts, your T-track models, some of the stuff that you've competed in at the national level, your NMRA activity and what you do there. So I'll just start us off, and we'll backtrack a little bit because we know you. We talked about the Santa Fe a little bit, but some folks might not. Tell us a little bit about your bio, your hobby bio. What do you like? What have you gotten into? Why don't you tell us a little bit about that tonight?
All right. Well, I'll tell you that born and raised in Pittsburgh, I get a lot of questions. People ask me, how does a Pittsburgher surrounded by the Pennsylvania Railroad and Conrail, how do they become a Santa Fe modeler? And I'll tell you that my grandfather, when I was about 8 years old, brought out the American Flyer PA red and silver passenger set that he had bought for my father when my father was about 8 years old. And that was like my first experience with model trains. And that red and silver PA war bonnet was enough for me. I never felt like I needed to, do anything else besides that. So that's how, my grandfather is the one that got me hooked on Santa Fe, right? And then that year for Christmas, I got an HO layout. I got an HO set, a couple of 2x4 boards that bolted together to make a 4x4 with a loop of track on it. That became like the stand with the Christmas tree in the center of it, and my little Tyco 040 pulling a variety of modern Tyco and, steam era crap behind it.
Right.
Up until about high school, I stayed in model railroading. In high school, I learned that guitars are more attractive to girls than model trains. So I started dumping my money into guitars instead of model trains. Then, I don't know, I think it was about 1990. In 1990, the NMRA National Convention was here in Pittsburgh. And I didn't know about it, and I wasn't even thinking about trains. But I was at my mom's, and I saw some old N scale junk that I had bought just for I don't know what reason, because my previous modeling was all HO. But I had this Bachmann set, and I was living in an apartment at that time, and I said, you know what, I'm gonna take this. And so since about 1990, I've been back into model railroading after taking about a 10-year hiatus, to play with guitars. And there used to be a hobby shop in Dormont. I used to live in the South Hills. It was called A.B. Charles.
Oh yeah.
He had everything, and like anything that you had in the old Walters catalogs. Do you remember they used to be like an inch and a half thick, like a phone book,
Oh yeah.
right? And anything you wanted in there, he had it in stock. And so, like, I started in the doing with the N scale. I went to one of the NMRA jamborees in the early 90s, and there were a bunch of guys that had an N-track group. They had actually, if I'm not mistaken, gotten some seed money from the NMRA to start an N-track group for the convention. So the convention was long gone, but the NMRA jamboree is like a one-day mini convention, and they still hold it to this day, usually in the springtime. There's clinics, there's display trains, they got a flea market, there's model contests. It's just like being at a convention, but it's just one condensed into one day. So I met these guys with the N-track group, and I joined them, started building some modules. That group fell apart. And then I was kind of like a lone wolf for a while. Jim Hoffer and I would get together once in a while and go to a show. And he said, this was when the Altoona Club show used to be in Bedford. It was in a gymnasium. It had no air conditioning, and it was always like the first week of August. So it was blistering in there, sweaty, disgusting. But there were some people there.
If there was any rain the week before, you almost had to swim into it too, out in that mud the dirt gravel parking lot.
Yeah, right. So it was a mess. But anyway, there were some guys there that had some T-track, and I was looking at it, and came home, and I started like looking at it, and I thought the price at the time was pretty unreasonable as far as like the modular kits that you could buy, right? Of course, I was living in an apartment, and I didn't have a place for like to have power tools and stuff to cut my own. But one year, then we went, and then I found this guy in Texas that was laser cutting, or maybe not laser, but he was using some kind of CNC machine to cut his layouts, or excuse me, his T-track module pieces. So I said to Jim, you want to join me on this? And he said, yeah. And so we ended up buying 8 modules, 4 corners and 4 double wide modules. He took half and I took half. One Labor Day, we sat here at my current house where I live here on the front porch. We assembled them. And then, so that was Labor Day. I think in January the following year, we started displaying it. Yeah, it was, because we started displaying it at Greenberg. We asked for a couple of tables to put our 8 modules. And Jim likes to tell this story. So Jim, I'm going to steal your thunder here. But on that Saturday that the show was set up, we had our 8 modules. And not 10 minutes into the show, a guy comes up and he says, is this layout for sale? He wanted to buy all 8 modules 15 minutes into the show.
Oh, wow.
And then
what year would this have been, Mike? Just for perspective, approximately, anyway.
Maybe 16.
Okay.
Because I already had some, because then the following year was the N-scale convention was in Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And,
so this is roughly like 5 years before that first time that you and Tom and Mike, it probably wasn't your first time, but it was the first time that what would become Iron City set something up together. So 5
Yeah.
for that.
So the local NMRA had a show, was doing it. So that summer show that I met you guys, I asked them, I said, hey, I'd rather bring my 2x4 Santa Fe layout instead of bringing some modules for your T-Track. And they said, yeah. So I displayed my 2x4, and I'm gonna brag a little bit here, but in 2020 I rebuilt it. You guys saw that. And Walters has this thing called the National Model Build Off or something like that, where people submit photos of their layouts and various things that they build for this build off competition. Well, I won 3rd place in that Walters competition that year in the freeform category for my 2x4 layout.
Yeah, it's an excellent layout. That's the one Brad and I saw, and I think that's the day we tried to kidnap you and force you into the Iron City.
Yeah.
We literally had to chase him down because he kept looking back and seeing 2 guys following him, and he kept trying to go faster, and so we went faster.
I don't know, man. I thought you guys were working for an ex-girlfriend of mine or something. We're gonna rub me out. So.
But I still remember when we were, I think we might have been standing there, Pat, talking to Richard maybe first. And all 3 of our mouths just kind of dropped. It's like, wow, look at that.
Yeah.
So we set off, and it took a while, but we eventually ran them down.
Oh, Mike. And then after that, Mike was like dropping cookies, and then we were just following him around, He's like, hey, I got this thing called T-Track. You boys should get involved. Oh, really? Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
I remember that. That was on one of our Let's Talk trains. You guys were starting to say that. And I said, you know what? Between Jim Hoffer and I, we got a layout. You guys just show up and just learn about how to set it up and what it's like to set it up for a show, because Jim and I had already a couple of years experience doing it for shows. And
that's what led to that first small setup. Would we have, man, there were no more than 20 modules on that, I don't think.
No,
first time
I had my Honda was stuffed to the gills. I remember that.
Mm-hmm.
But Mike, there's a key thing there, and I think people, our listeners around, the country and Australia and New Zealand, wherever we're at, it's okay to not have all the answers in the hobby. It's okay not to even have a module or whatever when you go to one of these shows. It's really great to be able, and people have to be open to let you observe. You observe and you see what's going on, you see how things are done. And it allows you, A, to say, well, maybe I can do that with a little encouragement. And B, it allows you to see, okay, I don't need to be overwhelmed. I don't need to feel like I need to be an expert. All these guys did was take a level and snap these in, especially T-Track. And boom, off they are off and running, So I think our members need to know that too. You do not have to be, and no offense, Mike, an award winner.
Yeah, but it helps.
It does help. But you can get into this hobby. You can do it. You can, and T-Track is the best way to start. It is the best way to start. And I wanted to make sure people knew that with Mike's help, he's created this huge monster. I know, last year at the Science Center, we must have almost been 100 modules deep, and they told us that we had to cut back a little bit. It wasn't the Iron City show; it was the Railroad show with other clubs.
That's the thing. We could easily, at this point, we could easily top 100 modules, but it's a matter of finding, because there are other people, like you mentioned, Pat, who kind of want to have their layouts on display. But we have enough modules. We're more limited by the amount of space we can get than we are by the number of modules, and that's all because of those first steps. So I guess that's the moral to this story is don't be afraid to take those first steps, especially with ours. It can be intimidating because nobody wants to be that guy, that brings a module that causes an electrical problem or causes derailments or whatever.
I don't know a guy that did that, but it's okay.
I don't. I'm not aware of anyone either. But but I mean, that's just a perfect example. Nobody's going to ostracize you. No, I mean, we might pick a little bit, but
Right.
but we'll figure a way, no matter what mistake you make. If you make a mistake on your module, if it's the first time, we'll find a way to get it integrated into the layout and be able to have you run trains over it. It ain't rocket science. We'll just put it that way. So if you have an inkling that you want to build T-track modules and have them as part of our layout, or if you're somewhere out of country, don't be afraid to take that first step, because it just can. You're talking to. I thought I was going to be a lone wolf my whole life, and now I got a bunch of friends from all over the world, really, but especially concentrated out there in the Pittsburgh area. So it's important somebody's got to make the first step. I hear a lot of people, get upset about this club or that club or this organization not being welcoming. Sometimes all it takes is just having the gumption to make that first step, and things go really, really well from there. We really, I've said it before, Pat, we really lucked into all this. It wasn't through any planning on our part. We just happened to meet up with the right guys, and Mike was one of them. So it's awesome to have him here.
Well, I was going to say chemistry is everything. And if you have a bunch of easy going folks, it just makes life more enjoyable. You know what I mean? And then everyone has their own niche at the Iron City. Some people are outgoing. Some people like to present at the show. Some people like to be behind the scenes running the computers and equipment. Other people want to be able to do extremely good digital scenery like Doug does with lights and different things. And I know Mike has his nice section where he has his round table and everything, his turntable, with his steam engines and stuff. Everyone has their own little thing. And that's the great thing about T-Track. You just plug in to a design that we have for that weekend and you go. But I think it's the wanting to have fun, keeping the culture light. Just because someone's modeling 1950 on one section, someone's doing 2026 on the other, that's quite all right. And that's the great thing about that too. One could be wintertime, one could be summer. It doesn't matter. Yeah.
And that brings us full circle back to Mike's current situation. That's how I know they chose a good guy to be president of OVL, because Pat, you and I firsthand know how welcoming and helpful and just willing to put up with people who don't know what they're doing right off the bat. Mike is, because we wouldn't have what we had if it wasn't been for us meeting up with Mike.
And Mike's not afraid to be. And Mike's not afraid to be a resource. He allows people to ask questions and he answers them to his ability, and never thinks it's a dumb question. He's always helpful. So it's been a great few years with the Iron City, and now Mike is, I guess we could call him El Presidente of Ohio Valley Lines. And Mike, it was great to have you on this evening. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. I hope the listeners aren't sleeping through this late into the podcast, but
I'll insert a loud sound when I'm doing the editing and wake them up if they are. How's that?
That sounds good. But when I invited you guys to come and visit, I never knew that it was going to be as big as Iron City has become. Right.
And we didn't either. That's for sure.
Right. I mean, think about that time when we set up at the Westview Hub, that community center library. It was just the six of us.
That still stands out as one of my all-time favorite model railroading experiences. There have been other really good ones too, but that just was a special day for sure, as far as
absolutely. It was really more about just hanging out with good bunch of guys, and we got to play with toys.
That's right.
Yeah, I really think, Mike, that was the spark, because I didn't want anybody else not to have that same feeling I did that weekend. You know what I mean? So it became my personal goal to invite as many people as I could, because I just couldn't get over how much enjoyment I had over a weekend. And I was like, I don't want to be selfish, not share this with other people.
And there's another thing that wouldn't have happened if it wouldn't have been for our connection with Mike, because Mike was the one who was able to get us access to that.
That's right.
That building we were in. I can still see us all standing there with Iron City beer cans in the middle of the library, surrounded by a T-track layout. I also remember someone thought he was way more agile than he really is or was and tried to crawl into the layout, but popped up on the other side and almost wiped out the whole thing. We won't mention who that was either.
Right. Well, I know it wasn't me because I'm not nimble enough to even get down there. So
turns out I'm not either. I just thought. But yeah, so many good memories, and it's only, I mean, it feels like a lifetime of memories sometimes, and it's only been since like 2021 or so. But
yeah,
great stuff.
Well, Mike, once again, thanks for having us on. Welcome back, everybody. Brad, what a great show. Mike did a great job explaining clubs and what he's been working on and some projects. And,
and as always, it's always good to hear from Mike too. So thank you to him for joining us for sure. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but
oh no, that's great. Hey, Brad, you know what's coming? Altoona, our Super Bowl, kind of one of our two. Like you said, you and I always debate on the greatest time of year for you and I. This is one of them, no matter what. We'll be at the Station Inn on Friday and Saturday coming up here in a few weeks. That's going to be the Altoona N-Scale show. And that is, I believe, 11, 12, and 13. And man, we hope to see you out there. It's going to be a great show. We just had our last podcast was our Altoona special show and talking to everybody, getting us all hyped up. So Brad, can't wait to see you. Get out there, see all our folks that are members and our listeners. It's just going to be a great time.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that we found out through this podcast, as we mentioned, that I don't know if we actually talked about it during the episode or if it was on air after, but we were concerned that maybe Mike wouldn't be able to join us because of his work schedule, but he is going to be able to be there with us. So people hear this and would like to meet Mike. He'll be there, I guess, just Saturday, I believe, is what he told us.
That's right. Yeah.
So that's exciting that he's at least going to be able to be there with us for some of the time.
Yeah, and I don't think people realize Mike is I don't know how to say it. He has been the heartbeat of N-Scale model railroading in the Pittsburgh area for decades. So make sure you come up and speak to him and take a look at his work. If he brings anything, I'm not sure if he's going to have a chance to bring anything up or if he's just coming to run some stuff, but I'm sure he'll share some pictures with you. And if you need to talk to him about the High Valley lines, how to become a member, I'm sure he'll point you in the right direction. He's excellent. He brought us two knuckleheads on board.
Yeah, for sure.
So yes, his tolerance level for human beings is at all-time high.
That might be why he's only going to be there for a day, though, Pat. We might be pushing up against the limits of that tolerance. I don't know.
That's right. Hey, Brad, they got us somehow, and if they want to hear some more of us, or if they want to know how to keep a channel that they can listen to us on, I'll lay them off here. Hey, we're on Apple, we're on YouTube, which we have our YouTube channel that we're trying to get videos up and running. Should have some good videos of the Altoona weekend and the Station Inn, so look forward to those on the YouTube channel. We're on Podbean, we're on Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Player FM, Listen Notes, Podchaser, and Boomplay. And of course, we're on the Iron City N-Scale page on Facebook, and that's where you'll see everything. I think the other day, Brad, someone came up to me and said it's like a living magazine. It's like a daily magazine with updates on everything from DCC to what's on sale, what local in our area, what local shops are open. We have showcases, we have clinics. And if you have a question and you just want to know or an opinion on something, you throw it up there and man, we'll answer it immediately. If not,
and we specialized in very long answers to short questions too.
That's right. Be prepared.
Be prepared for a little bit of windiness in your response, but we'll eventually get around to answering the question. It may take longer than you expected. No, it's a great thing to be a part of, and thank you to everybody who has joined and continues to participate.
Absolutely, Brad. And as we move into the railroad, I guess, season, a lot of people call it, for at least in the North America. In Europe, we start getting into the fall and winter, and a lot of more people are spending time inside and working on their layouts. Be prepared to hear a bunch of great shows that we're building right now, and kind of a refreshing look on model railroading, insiders in the actual rail fanning, and actual people that work for the railroads. We're going to have it all. And so as our show grows, so does our fan base, so does our ability to great people to come on our show and talk to us. And that's what it's about. Our show is a conversation format, good friends just talking to each other. And I think it comes out, and I think our listeners really enjoy that. So be on the lookout for a lot more shows. Come see us at Altoona, and I'll pass it over to Brad for his final thoughts.
Yeah, thanks, Pat. And especially thank you to Mike, El Presidente DeSensi, for joining us. Mike's a good friend of ours that we've known for a while now, as much of a while as it can be since Iron City was created. It's easy to forget that it's still a relatively new group because of the growth that we've had over the past 3 or 4 years. But it's always great to catch up with Mike, and we wish him the best in his endeavors as the president of the Ohio Valley Lines. So thank you, Mike, and we look forward to hearing from you in the future. And also just an enormous thank you once again to all of our listeners, all of our supporters. Continue, as Pat said, if we're at events and you're in the area, don't hesitate to stop by and have a chat. Don't hesitate to reach out on the Facebook page. And with that, we will say, signing off, and thank you so much for joining us. So with that, we will say thank you once again to the listeners for joining us for Season 2, Episode 17. All right, rail fans, that's all the steam we've got for this edition of the Iron City Roundhouse Report. Until next time, keep those gauges green, your couplers connected, and may your layouts always run smoothly. Happy railroading.